So the new moon in Aries here is going to be arriving 21st of March, the first of two new moons in Aries this Aries season, the second being that solar eclipse. I'm going to look at this chart for the first new moon. We're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down, look at some elections, look at some news. Stay tuned. So Aries new moon, here we are. Just a little video here. I want to peek in, keep the conversation going, touch base and talk about this syzygy. Always important to check into the drum beats of reality, right? The new moons and the full moons as they are making their way through our lives and through the ephemeris. And of course the eclipses every 6 months as the accentuated form of those syzygies. But in March and April 2023, we get two of them in Aries, two new moons. First, this new moon that isn't an eclipse, and then the eclipsed new moon that will be on the 20th of April, the 420 solar eclipse with Jupiter. I don't smoke any marijuana, but people that do are probably going to be feeling into that, I'm sure. But let's come in here and talk about this first new moon. And let's just jump right in here to the chart. You've got 21 March 2023, 1823, 6:23 p.m. here in Central Europe, and it's the first of these two moons, the second being an eclipse. Like I've said now 3 times, but what starts is not the full story. That's the key takeaway of this series of events, is that the beginnings that start here this week with the sun coming into Aries. We have the astrological new year, then we get this new moon at the 0 degrees, Aries 1. They call it the 0 point, the zodiacal 0 point, the spring 0 point, the Aries 0 point. Hugely symbolic and significant because it is the first degree of the zodiac. And I have here what starts now is not the full story, because it's about to be radically transformed by the lunar nodes. The lunar nodes will enter Aries. The true node enters Aries in July. The first eclipse in Aries is April 20th. And so everything that's being activated with Jupiter's movement in Aries last year and then this year and then now this new moon that front runs the eclipse is about to be transformed by the nodes. That's what the nodes do. The hand of God comes into our lives and the fate rearranges the reality for the benefit of this higher being or beings, or not even beings, but just the love of reality, right? The loving, divine, spiritual, essential quality of life itself comes in to rearrange our reality with eclipses. And so this is kind of almost bittersweet's the wrong word. It's just sort of a calm enjoyment before things we don't even understand are about to emerge in this sector of the chart. And I have here Mars, Mercury, mutual reception. This is why I love this chart quite a lot. The first new moon in Aries season is because you've got Mars in Gemini finishing out its time right in those late degrees of Gemini. It's moving faster. The whole rebirth and revampment of the Gemini sector as Mars retrograded there August 2022 until now, it's still there. That's culminating, and Mars is now moving and completing. We're moving forward now with the benefit of the rearrangements of Mars and Gemini. But look now where Mercury is, right in Aries. And so Mercury in Pisces, yes, had a mutual reception. By night triplicity, Mars rules Pisces. It's a square, so maybe more tense and maybe less smooth operating. This is now Mercury right in Aries, mutually received by Mars and Gemini, both by domicile, the major form of rulership that we like to look at. By sextile, Mercury with Jupiter, Mercury under the beams of the sun, yes, but remember, ancient astrologers and Islamic astrologers, when the sun has dignity like it does in Aries, it's exalted, things under the sun's beams, when the sun has great power, are not harmed as well, are not harmed as much, because the sun is so strong. You want to be mixing with the sun when the sun is very powerful. So this Mercury is not throttled as much as it might have been when it was under the beams in Pisces, and it's mutually received by Mars and Gemini. To me, this is like the transit and the syzygy and the new moon to acknowledge the Mars and Gemini story, to say goodbye to the Mars and Gemini story, and to use the momentum of the changes here as we're engaging in a new moon, the final new moon that's not an eclipse before the solar eclipse in April. So if you're going to do new moon rituals, I know on Twitter I was tweeting about this and some people were like, listen, this is a new moon ritual moment. Do your new moon rituals. I can kind of agree with that. Acknowledging that it will be eclipsed, for sure. But yes, do some rituals before the eclipses arrive. You might want to set intentions. Remember what happens at 0 degrees Aries in 2023 in July. Saturn and Neptune meet there. And that is a major long-term cycle transit where our whole reality will be refreshed. I think someone on Twitter, I forgot, I wish I could have pulled the tweet up, I didn't, but they were like, use this to set intentions for 2026. And I can see it because it's connected by degree. Saturn and Neptune, it's Saturn and Neptune conjoining at this Aries 0 point in February 2026, the same degree of this new moon. So you might want to do some more longer thinking. This is the last new moon, then there's 2 years of eclipses in Aries. And then after that, we're going to be building to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the same degree. So that's one way to do it. I think, frankly, setting eclipses, setting intentions and visioning for eclipse work. Do your eclipse work now with this new moon. This is my advice to you, okay? This is what I tell clients. When you see eclipses coming to a sector of the chart, the best thing to do is increase your knowledge and awareness and exploration of the themes of that house. So let's say you're an Aries rising. What I would do with this new moon is say, okay, think about the themes of the first house. Who are you? Who do you want to become? What's your purpose in this reality? What about appearance changes, vitality? Get those questions on a sheet and then do some visioning as to engage the energy and get out ahead of the eclipse so you're prepared when the hand of God comes to rearrange that sector. You've already done work and prep work. That's how I like to work with eclipses, when I see them and knowing they're going to be arriving. Let's push. I was already talking about some of this stuff. Mars has been in Gemini since August 20th. It will have cleared its shadow and is mutually received by both Mercury and Saturn. I didn't mention that. Yes, Mars is in a mutual reception with Saturn in Gemini because they're both the triplicity lords of those signs. Now, Saturn is the day lord, Mars is the night lord. So you actually never get a day or night when they're technically in a reception. So maybe this, I can pull back a little bit from this claim, but still they're both do well in the signs at day and night. They're kind of trading off here. Let me come into what I want to talk about here. Henri Cartier-Bresson. I love this French photographer. I grew up looking at his books. I love his images. And he had this concept of the decisive moment. It was a title of a book he published. This was a street photographer, magnum photographer. He had Leicas. He would go around and just shoot moments, street scenes. And I think it perfectly embodies this phrase of what we can do with Aries and the decisiveness of Aries, but the Mercury-Mars mutual reception, right? We've been thinking and planning. Now Mercury's in Aries. And so it's less about staying in the thinking, it's using the words to act. That's Mercury in Aries. Mars in Gemini is acting with the words. And so it's like the perfect combination. Mercury is also technology. Mercury is literally photography in some ways. And then that moment that you push the shutter, right? That's the Mars moment. And it's the moment when you just feel into a moment. You make an actuation with the camera. Cartier-Bresson was a genius at this. And here's my favorite photograph of his. This was the one that when I had the book as a kid, or my uncle had the book, I would go visit my uncle. He would just throw the photo books in front of me. This is my favorite Cartier-Bresson image. Look at this. It was the perfect decisive moment. He pushed the shutter right as this man was hopping from a ladder over water, and the shadow had the perfect reflection. And then in the background, you have this other kind of beautiful scene here, but this is the nature of Mars. It's acting right when it's time, when we see the opening and we move into the opening. And it's just what I said here. Mercury and Aries, acting, thinking, fast, decision-making. Both Mars and Mercury are fast planets. They're planets of speed. Mars knows when to act and it gets it done. Mercury is a moving, constantly moving energy. So you may find with this new moon and in the weeks coming after this new moon that you're into some speeding energy. Remember, new moons set an energetic tone for 2 weeks, full moons for 2 weeks. We're living with this energy for 2 weeks. Now Mars comes into Cancer, so for sure there is a shift of the energy transit-wise, but this is the prenatal syzygy of everything that happens until that full moon in Libra. So we're feeling into this decisive, fast-moving, active moment here with this Mars-Mercury mutual reception. Saturn and Pisces, structure and foundations of creativity, long-lasting acts. I love it for the photograph, right? It's Saturn, because you're fusing it onto a print, or at first a negative and then a print. That's going to last for a while unless you destroy it. That's Saturn and Pisces. You have the Venusian side of Pisces, which is the visual arts. You have Saturn and Pisces squaring Mars and Gemini and pushing each other, and maybe some discomfort, but still this push. And Mars in Gemini is similar, acting with the mind, and of course Mercury and Aries ruling and having that reception loop with Mars. So I think photography is quite perfect here as something to consider. When to pull the trigger, to push the shutter, rather. Not to trigger the shutter is what I have. Let's not get confused with what trigger implies something else, right? Something else that's very martial, but we're going to ignite that shutter to make the actuation and capture the light. So think about it in your life. That's why I want to bring this up here. It's not simply, maybe you're going to go out and do some photography. I love it. We all have it on our phones now. Go get into your photography, make some beautiful photographs, certainly. But what else? What's your moment, your decisive shutter triggering moment that might be emergent here with this new moon? Think about it. Something could emerge. I mean, these symbols are very outer world active, and you can use this. You might even just consider it. What would I be doing if I had to make a decisive choice and had to act on some kind of decision? What would that be in my life? Just think about it. That might be part of the new moon ritual. Okay, back into some charts here. Let's do some more chart work. Still the new moon chart. 4-planet Aries stellium underscores very much the Aries energy that's key right now. And look at the chart. Jupiter, Mercury, both the sun and moon. That's 4 traditional planets. You can throw Eris in. Why not? Everybody loves Pluto. If you are going to use Pluto, you have to use Eris. That's a separate video. Eris is still in Aries. It's been in Aries for a long time. So you have all of this blends. Chiron is in Aries. All of this mix and blend, let alone 4 traditional planets. What is Aries? Action, that's Mars. Passion and action. Action on behalf of and with clarity about the true self. That's the sun, exalted in Aries. Mars rules Aries by domicile. So your action on behalf of and with clarity about the true self and its visions for a higher purpose. That's the Jupiter ruling Aries by night triplicity. So that's why Aries is such a cool archetype, isn't it? I have an Aries stellium, so I, of course, get to love it. But setting all that aside, the mix of Mars, Jupiter, and the sun is kind of a sweet energy, isn't it? You don't get it anywhere else. No other sign has this, which is action and passion for the self, for a higher purpose, all mixed together. So this underscores what I was just saying about using your new moon rituals, this idea of what would be the decisive action if you had to take one right now. And then you can bring in this kind of Aryan blend of archetype, that it's the self for a higher Jupiterian purpose and moving with power into reality. So really consider it. I think that the stellium calls us to consider it. And let's just keep in mind, remember, Mars receives by sign everything happening in Aries. It's like acting with words. Write that letter, publish that poem, whatever you're doing and working on verbally. Get your Substack launched. I'm still trying to get mine launched. I've got the first article. I'm hoping to get that done here very, very soon. When we write, we act. It's the purest form of writing in some sense. An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped. That's what I love about the Gemini Mars ruling this stellium. All right, and the next, still on the chart. Got to do chart work, all right? It gets boring, I know, sometimes, but we got to do the chart work. It's all here. This is the symbol map. This is where it's all flowing from. We're not making stuff up, astrologers. We're pulling from the map of the symbols. And so let's stay with the chart. Venus is with the North Node in Taurus, springing a spiritual longing and creativity. I think I wanted to say bringing there, but springing works. Spring, right? We're here in spring now. So we're springing a spiritual longing and a creativity. Deep and profound love for all beings and for all things beautiful. John Keats, beauty is truth, truth, beauty. How cool is it that we get a Taurus Venus with the North Node to oversee everything right now? I'm loving this astrology, by the way. I love the way the symbols are interacting right now. I think it's such a cool gift for us after all of that heavy Saturn for the last 5.5 years. We come out of the gates with this beautiful, like Aries and Taurus and this mutual reception with Mars and Mercury. And the beauty and the creativity in the moment. I've talked about it on video after video, so I'm not going to say much more about it, but just get into your Taurus, Venus, fall in love with something, find God, celebrate the earth around you and the beauty of the fact that you even can create, that human beings even can create, is such a deep and profound thing. I mean, I put this up, I can get my cut crayons out and make a work of art right here and put it on my wall. And that work of art can inspire me. You know, that is such a beautiful thing. And so use some of the Venusian. Get into your bath bombs, like I always say. Just do that, okay? I'm not gonna say much more about it, but it's a heavy part of this moment. Okay, shifting into the news. As you know, I like to talk about news when I talk about new moons and full moons. I just think it's a good time to check in with some of the stories I'm watching. This is the main story right now, protests in France. In France, some protests against increased retirement age turn violent. France retirement protests, parents bans gathering near key sites to quell unrest. Part of why this is so powerful, and I'll talk about it in my Pluto and Aquarius video coming out really soon after this, is that Pluto was in Aquarius during the French Revolution. Pluto will enter Aquarius Thursday, 2 days after this new moon, and you have this unrest in France building. But set aside Pluto and Aquarius. Mars is passion and violence. You can't get around that signification of Mars. Pull up any ancient text, any text worth its weight is going to say Mars is riots and violence. And there you go. We're seeing that build here. All of the Aries activation ruled by Mars implies maybe moves of violence and protest and all of that based on passion, right? Protests are about passion and action. This is the thing that's so key to understand about Mars. It's not just indiscriminate violence. It can be that, but usually it's because we feel strongly, right? Someone feels so strongly about something that they go and defend it with, sadly, violent action at times. And we don't have to get into the philosophy of is violence useful at times, but so I'm not trying to just say, oh, violent. I tend to be completely anti-violent, but you can see movements of people trying to hold their leaders to account. Maybe there's some useful deploying of Mars when you talk about protests. I'm kind of more Gandhian, peaceful, non-violent protest. Dr. King, Gandhi, they wrote about ahimsa. That's kind of what I like. That scene in the film Gandhi, where the nonviolent protesters just walk in a line. I think it was in South Africa, and the colonizing forces in South Africa were just beating them as they walked in the line. That scene stuck with me, and it's always stuck with me of how powerful that is as of an expression of the nonviolence. It's like, I will stay nonviolent even if you threaten to beat me, and they just walk in and get beaten, led by Gandhi. That's kind of my version of Mars. But let's come back to, I don't want to get too lost in that. Mars is moving faster now, and just keep in mind, watch France this week. People on Twitter have been keying me in. There's Irish unrest. People have been saying there's unrest in Kashmir. It's kind of all over right now. As spring arrives, Pluto hits Aquarius. It's these revolutions for humanity. And the reason why I'm bringing it up now is that there's that stellium in Aries. And that's a lot of planets are giving way to Mars. They're feeding they're being fed by and relying on Mars, and this is a story that relates. And the only other news story I'm going to check in with here is that this Mars and Gemini, Saturn and Pisces square, I believe it relates to AI in a certain way, and I have things are moving fast with technology as Mars' cycle moves toward completion. This is one of the biggest things, that Mars started moving faster. It's getting those mutual receptions with Mercury in Pisces and now in Aries. And Mars was doing that as Saturn moved into Pisces to square Mars. And this is the major story of March and this week in particular was the week of March 17th. This week in AI, this is someone on Twitter named Linus Ekenstam. And it was not this week. I'm recording this on Monday. It was last week. Ground zero for a bunch of massive AI releases. This is all you need to know to get up to speed on AI. He wrote, it's popular on Twitter. People write these threads. There's like these Twitter accounts now that are your news updates they write these threads every day to update you on different topics. But it was Stanford, Alpaca, SB, Google Workspace AI, ChatGPT-4 is the key. That was a major upgrade. MindJourney V5. I've seen that all over Twitter. People that know how to use MindJourney. I don't use that, but they're like really detailed photographic images, almost indistinguishable more than ever from reality. If you see a photo online, you have to always be skeptical now. I mean, even in this age before, what's those Lee Harvey Oswald photos on the cover of Time magazine where it was clearly doctored, but more than ever now, we have to be skeptical. And then Microsoft Copilot and 365, and then Anthropic Claude. I don't know what that is. But anyhow, AI has been arriving more and more and more as Mars gets faster in Gemini, pushing the action of the technological, that's Gemini, but squaring Saturn and Pisces. We're still feeling and trying to understand what is AI, how to work with it, how is it going to change my workflow or my sense of being. And I'll tell you this here, I've worked with it a lot. I like to use it to generate abstract art, okay? To me, I just love it to do that. It's beautiful to get these. I love the abstract art you can see behind me. But the writing, it sucks. This is my thing. AI can't write. That's one of my main themes right now, because it can generate a bunch of paragraphs that kind of sound good, but every AI output that I've ever seen, I've always had to rewrite it. Can't capture my voice, doesn't know how. And I can rewrite it and put it in. Hey, write in this. It still can't get my voice. And what I found is that writing is spiritual. Writing is a direct connection to divine, to actualize it through language. And AI is never going to replicate that. It's a computer code. So I'm less concerned, but these epiphanies happen because I was working with this. This is a Saturn and Pisces square Mars. It's tension. It's trying to get it to write. It can't write. And then it's the breakthroughs. That's the nature of the square aspect. And so anyhow, we'll settle further in once Mars enters Cancer on Saturday. We're going to settle in with this energy, with the AIs, with all of the stuff that's going down. We get to kind of make a home with it. So I'm excited about that. All right, and just closing out the video, 3 elections. This is where I like to do finding elections in these syzygy videos, but I'm just going to give you 3 quick ones. And keep in mind when I do these, this is not like a chosen election for you to act. You need to hire an astrologer to do that. They'll pick a perfect time, because I can't go through all the factors. First of all, everybody's in a different location that's watching this. That changes the rising sign and changes the nature of the planetary aspects that you can capture when a certain rising sign is there in your location. So I can't do that here. I like to always just feeling into vibes. What moons do I like for certain moons that I want to accentuate here, that I'm looking forward to living through and experiencing? So this first one, keep in mind, it's the final waxing phase before eclipse season. We wax from this new moon in Aries to the full moon in Libra. Then we wane into the solar eclipse. I prefer to do things not during eclipse seasons, but when there's waxing phases. Most often the action we take, if we want to grow our lives or get into something new, we want to maybe use that waxing phase of the lunation. And the waning phase can be good for letting things go or releasing. But so this is the last one. You might, and there's some cool charts here. So election 1, right after the new moon, there's a young moon conjoins Jupiter in Aries. This is a cool moon because it's just coming out from the sun's beams and will be visible. I think I might be able to sneak a view of it here. It's 14 degrees away. Maybe I can't see it this night, but some of you in America, you probably will be able to. But the moon will not be conjoined Jupiter then. But this could be an option. You get the moon applying to Jupiter, and it's potentially something to use here. This moon is averse to Saturn and sextile Mars. So this is a very nice moon. A young moon hitting Jupiter. Libra rising, if you catch that, you get Venus and Taurus. And Venus also has no relationship with malefic planets. And so this is that one Venus and Taurus moment here with the waning moon to capture some of that Venusian. I think I'm not going to say much more about it. It just is like the first time after the new moon, all the themes we already talked about, you can get into it with this chart even more. It's going to build in the hours and day after that new moon as the moon applies to Jupiter. The second election that I'm looking forward to, young moon with Venus in Taurus. This is the only time the moon in Taurus will join Venus in Taurus. And look at what happens now. No Saturn from Aquarius. Now Pluto's in Aquarius, but I'm not someone who looks at Pluto in the same way I look at other planets in terms of casting sign-based aspects, in terms of how we pick elections and all of that. Pluto's, what it's doing is saturating in that 0 degrees of Aquarius right now. But if you're someone who wants to use an orb and treats Pluto like you treat other planets, then maybe this is not, and you think Pluto's a malefic, which I don't. I think it's a benefic. But if you're concerned about that Pluto square, the other thing to be concerned about is the North Node right with the moon and Venus. So these are reasons why this Venus in Taurus with this moon in Taurus maybe isn't the purest form. But if you set those things aside, it's nice. It's still a young growing moon. The North Node might make things strange, but worth being with and experiencing and being open to divinity and strangeness. That can be brought in. But it's the moon, the exaltation lord of Taurus, with Venus, the domicile lord of Taurus, joining together Friday, 24 March, 7:28 in Central Europe. And there you go. You can get this one. I love it. And then the last one, this is my favorite. This is the one that's my favorite, okay? And it's the 31st of March, Friday, 2021 is the chart I'm looking at here. So 821 in Central Europe. This is this beautiful Leo moon. I cannot wait for this one. The first Leo moon with Saturn out of Aquarius. We get Leo back. We get Leo back. And what's so beautiful about it is that it's making an exact trine to exaltation lord, to its domicile lord rather, the sun in Aries, and the sun is exalted in Aries. I mean, this is pure fire goodness. And Jupiter is still in Aries with the sun. It's a pure fire expression of that selfhood this is almost like the king being called back into the city after being out on adventures. It's like Caesar coming into Rome, right? He's crossing the Rubicon and he's the Caesar. He becomes, the new king effectively. I know Augustus Caesar is really when it all begins, the son of Julius Caesar. But Julius, so you can think about, but the king coming home, right? The regal homecoming of and you're the king and queen. You're the kings and queens, okay? You're the royalty in this case. And how are you coming home here to yourself? After living through Pluto being in Aquarius now, Saturn being in Pisces now, Mars being in Cancer by the time we get to this Leo moon. This is like coming home now to the new energy. You've done it. You've completed Saturn in Aquarius. You've completed Mars retrograde in Gemini. You've survived that Pluto ingress. And the king now can return to his or her or their rightful place on the throne. And I love this here. What do I have here? The Leo moon trines the sun, its domicile lord. More action, more fire, more identity. Trines Jupiter and squares Venus later. So both benefics overcome this moon. One, Jupiter by trine and Venus by square. It's the fire-water themes we've talked about in my last video of the creation and then the identity-based creativity. It's just a beautiful chart, all with Venus and Taurus. And you get this if you wait. I picked the chart where the moon is applying to the sun. I just love that luminary exchange. But if you wait, you also get charts where the moon will be enclosed between Mars and Jupiter and is applying to square Venus and trine Jupiter. Those are some really cool charts too. This whole Leo moon is dope. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be amazing. So this is my favorite one, 31 March. It starts, that whole weekend is going to be just fire. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay, so that is the breakdown of the Aries new moon. Have a lovely Aries new moon. Have a very cool lunation here. You'll get the full moon in Libra, and then we come back to that solar eclipse. Just have a good one. I'm glad to be here. Go to my website, sjanderson144.com. I have readings available there. And just have an awesome time. Happy astrological new year to you, and have a great year ahead. Astrologers and astrology enthusiasts and everybody out there. Take care.